Hi, and welcome to Stump the Pastor. Today's question comes from Patty in Minnesota. She has a question about God. She asks, why is God portrayed as vengeful in the Old Testament and all loving and caring in the New Testament? I understand Jesus saved us, but why the sudden change in the depiction of our interpretation of God? Well, thank you, Patty, for sending another question to me and for being a part of this process. Have you guys noticed that lots of our questions end up being about the nature of God? I mean, that really is kind of at the heart of our dilemma, isn't it? We've talked before that if none of our metaphors actually and adequately capture the essence of God, then how do we even talk about God? And you'll remember that my suggestion is to use metaphors that describe experience. God is love, spirit, grace, presence, mystery, those kinds of things. But Patty's question goes to the heart of a common perception among Christians about Judaism and the process by which Jewish understanding of God changed over time from a very primitive view of God attached to one's land, like Moab had their God and the Hebrews had their God, but it was about the God of their land, to God being described as a being that in many cases needed to be assuaged of anger. But this was just the beginning of Judaism's developing understanding of God. So to say that the Older Testament has a vengeful God and the Newer Testament has a loving God is incomplete. Certainly, it makes Christians think our version of God is better, but that is common group activity that happens to make the people we call us, in this case Christians, look better than the people we call them, the Jews. You know, the truth is that the Older Testament is full of examples of worshipers aware of the love and compassion of God. And we should also state Judaism has continued to grow in its awareness and experience of God, just as Christianity has evolved in our awareness and experience of God. By the time the Older Testament reaches the prophet Isaiah, for example, we hear, comfort my people. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed. The glory of Adonai will be revealed and all people together will see it. And the Psalms tell us, Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Even one of the first creation stories in Genesis tells us again and again that when God created light and water and life and so forth, each creation was labeled good. And when everything was done, God called it very good. So the reality of God as the essence of love and creation and joy is acknowledged again and again in the Hebrew Scriptures that we call the Older Testament. My friend Rabbi Stephen Slater tells me that contemporary Jews share many of the metaphors Christians use about God. One of the most important that they use is God as parent. The love a parent has for a child is descriptive of the love God has for people. That's in the Older Testament and the Newer Testament. But the reason I think we don't often see it or recognize the truth is that as Christians began to develop a distinct identity from Judaism in its early development, we began to see ourselves as different from Judaism rather than a development out of Judaism. And this distinction was sometimes supported by anti-Jewish bias from pulpits and clergy. Christians needed to enhance our perceived superiority to Judaism, so we created caricatures of Jews rather than appreciating the contribution Judaism gave as a foundation for Christian development. And you see, just like racism is institutionalized by the need for white people to feel better about ourselves by enhancing our privilege at the expense of other races, so Christianity at times has used this same approach when reading Jewish scripture or critiquing Jewish culture to make Christianity look preferable in contrast. And you know, the truth is, we don't need to do that. Christian theology stands or falls on its own sense of cohesion, depth of thought, openness to God's reality in our lives. And at our best, we appreciate the contribution that Judaism laid as a foundation for our own theological growth and understanding. So yes, there are some bad descriptions of God in the Bible. They are simply human beings trying to figure out the mystery of God. And who among us hasn't gotten it right the first time? So use our own experience of the presence of God to remember that you and I are the result of creation that was born through God's love. And it is very good. Thanks, Patty, for your question. I appreciate you staying in touch with it, and I appreciate any of you that have questions to get in touch. Let me know. It's always possible to stump the pastor, but we're going to do it together. See you next time.